first, the latest on recovery efforts after the Baltimore bridge collapse. Officials say 2 bodies have now been recovered from dangerous murky waters after a cargo ship crashed into the bridge on Tuesday. One man was aged 26, the other 35.
In the area of the middle span of the bridge, divers recovered two victims of this tragedy trapped within the vehicle.
And divers are still searching for the remains of 4 other construction workers now presumed dead. Efforts have now been classified as a salvage mission rather than a recovery mission. Officials confirm the ship's data recorder has also been recovered. CGTN's Owen Fairclough filed this report from Baltimore.
We've had more details overnight of not just the investigation, but indeed details of the final moments before the Dali struck the bridge, just seconds between the Mayday alert being raised and officials here on the bridge managing to close it to traffic and stop this catastrophe escalating even further. We've also had more details as well from safety officials about their investigation. They've confirmed, federal transport officials, safety transport officials, that they have been able to board the Dali and retrieve the crucial voyage recording equipment that's like to inform them of those last moments of that ship as it collided with the bridge. There are also reports as well that the propulsion system on that ship failed. We know from that video we've seen that the lights went out on the ship, but obviously those investigators want to know more details. They also want to hone in on what appears to be a troubled safety history for this ship, with reports, for example, in 2016 that it collided as it left the port of Antwerp. There are also other reports about safety problems that were documented and are available on publicly available databases. Understandably, perhaps safety officials here don't want to comment too much on those details, but they clearly are investigating the history of this vessel.
We are going to be working with NTSB as they lead their independent investigation. It's too early to speculate, of course, what NTSB will find, but if they discover or determine anything that should be considered in the regulation, inspection, design, or funding of bridges in the future, we will be ready to apply those findings.
There's clearly a wider issue here with reports about the bridge and just how much protection it had for a collision for a cargo boat of this size. There's been some conjecture about that. What is clear, though, is that bridges like this one, built some 50 years ago, were never designed for the advent of globalization and interdependent trade with ever bigger cargo ships carrying sometimes thousands and thousands of containers as they crisscross the world. And that's something that the US federal government is going to have a look at as it looks at the infrastructure around the United States and needs to consider just how much it can keep up with the ever-growing demand for globalized products and the way that they're transported across the world. Owen Fairclough, CGTN in Baltimore.
And the collapse of Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge is expected to disrupt shipping and supply chain. It spanned the entrance to the Baltimore port, which officials say handled 47 million tons of foreign cargo. Officials now say maritime traffic passing through the port is suspended until further notice. The port also is the busiest in the U.S. for car exports and the 9th busiest for foreign cargo, but it's also one of the smallest ports in the country's northeast, handling about 265,000 containers in the final quarter of 2023. By contrast, the ports of New York and New Jersey tackled about 2 million containers during the same period. Several companies are also facing major delays in distribution and delivery due to the collapse. Amazon and FedEx both have distribution centers east of the bridge. A lack of access to the Baltimore port will see delays in delivery times for many customers. BMW and Volkswagen also use the port for exporting and importing car parts. The closure will probably force companies to ship their other products from other East Coast ports, and that may lead to higher prices for consumers. Let's now continue the conversation about the immediate and future economic impact of this bridge collapse. For that, Anthony Chan joins us now. He's former chief economist at JP Morgan Chase. Always good to have you on the show. Thank you so much, sir.
Good to be with you.
Baltimore is a sizable port in the U.S. Can you explain from an economic standpoint how big a loss the collapse of this bridge is? It's a major artery for shipping and transport, but there are several other larger ports on the East Coast.
Yeah, this is not a positive development by any stretch of anyone's imagination. We have almost 850,000 cars that pass through these ports, and now they'll have to go through other routes, whether it be other ports, or maybe some of the parts will have to go through land. The bottom line, Karina, is that it's going to cost more. It's going to be pushing up inflation pressures. That's the bad news. The good news is that in terms of tonnage, it's probably about 17th in terms of size relative to other ports. So it's not all that large, but nonetheless, we know that when you have almost $80 billion passing through these ports, and now that's going to be interrupted, it is a problem, but not a significant problem when you consider that U.S. nominal GDP is almost $28 trillion. So you got to put these numbers in perspective. It's not good news, but it's not catastrophic news.
Absolutely. Thankfully, we're also in the slow period for shipping, pre the holiday rush. But if cargo is diverted to New Jersey, to Savannah, for example, a 10% increase is one of the numbers I've seen mentioned. Doesn't sound like a lot, but some have said that this could cause pandemic-like supply chain disruptions, with vessels waiting for days to get into these ports. Do you agree with that assessment?
I don't think it's going to cause pandemic type of panic situation, but it is going to be a problem. I think that already other ports are getting ready to be able to pick up some of the slack. And you also have to keep in mind that this is not like during the pandemic where people were very anxious to buy as many goods as possible. Right now, we have goods deflation. We have service price inflation. So service prices are rising while goods prices are very depressed. So it probably is coming at a good time. This would have happened right after we reopened the overall economy and there was an insatiable demand for goods. It would have been a bigger problem. But nonetheless, it's going to be a multi-year problem because this bridge will take some time. They'll take months to clean it up, pick up all the ruins. And we know that building this bridge, even some of the experts that think that we can go at rapid fire pace, say that it will take anywhere from 2.5 to 3 years to rebuild this bridge. And by the way, it's not just rebuilding something we did before. Now, of course, because of this disaster, we're going to be talking about building cylinders to reinforce it and making it even stronger than before. So that adds time to the construction phase also.
Yeah, I like the point that you made that inflation is actually helping the situation right now. Car companies and shippers are likely to take the biggest hit in the immediate aftermath. But what happens to consumers, let's say those waiting to buy cars or waiting on deliveries of them, because the lead time for these, vehicles are still taking a very long time compared to pre-pandemic?
Yes, you're going to see wait times a little bit longer. You're going to see the cost of transporting these vehicles bump up a little bit higher. But let's not lose sight of the fact that a lot of the cars come from that Mexico, Canada, and U.S. agreement, and so they don't go through that port. So there's a huge number of cars, but you're going to see some of those brands that go through this port having significant difficulties, whether it's Mazda, whether it's BMW, whether it's Fiat. Those cars go through there. So if you happen to want to purchase a car that goes through that port, you have a bigger problem than if you purchase cars that don't go through those ports.
And you touched on this, but I want to stress the importance. So nearly 2 years ago, an Evergreen vessel got stuck in Chesapeake Bay near Baltimore. It took weeks for crews to clear it. How imperative is it that the Port of Baltimore starts immediately to rebuild? The president has promised federal funds to do it. And how weak is our infrastructure in this regards? We do not want to see something like this happen. If this happened during the pandemic or if it happened during the peak shipping season, it would be a far more detrimental result that we would be seeing.
That's a really excellent point that you made, because what that tells me and should tell everybody is that all the ports that we have now, all the bridges that we have now will probably have to be reinforced, because now that we experience this, the last thing we want is to go and see this movie all over again. So we're going to have to reinforce things out there. It is a serious issue. And it also speaks to the fact that our infrastructure is weak, and you're only as strong as your weakest link. So if this were to happen again, and with all the goods that go through all the ports and all the bridges, it's not something that can't happen. Remember, this was an accident. And so can you imagine if this happened somewhere else? It would be a real big problem. So this is the reason why we have to get started. I know that a lot of people want to politicize this. I'm one of the most nonpartisan economists you'll ever meet. And this is urgent. And I agree with you. We have to start this very quickly. I know that some people want to argue, well, wait until the insurance companies pays, wait until the shipping companies pay. You cannot wait. It's already going to take too long to do the cleanup and do the building. The last thing you want to do is wait for money. Urgency is of utmost importance here.